Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday and a dark, dark day here in Williamsburg, Virginia. Hi, everybody. Today is clue number 7. Are you ready? You want to talk about a catch-up week for this mystery quilt? This is what I had in mind for a catch-up week because you're going to get done with these clues, with this clue, relatively easy, I do believe. So if you're still working on previous clues up until this point, like me, then you have a whole extra 7 days after cutting these pieces today to work on previous clues. I myself am still working on clue number 4. I'm halfway done with clue number 4. All my other clues are caught up and I'm still working on clue number 4. Anybody else? Hi everybody, it's so great to see you. Thanks for joining me. If this is your first time watching, I'm Lisa with Lisa Capen Quilts. And we are doing the mystery medallion quilt. You can find the clues, the link for the playlist, all in the description box down below. There is no SVG cutting file for this week. We're just cutting strips of fabric and sewing them together. So here in a second, I'm going to put you down on the cutting mat. I'm going to show you how many strips you need to cut and how wide they are. I'm going to go over how I cut mine. And then we're going to talk about how much more fabric we're going to need from the yardage that we bought for this quilt. And then I have some goodies that after we're done with clue number 7, we can hang out for a few minutes and I can show you some of the things I got at the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival. Hello. Yep, I'm still catching up. You're not alone. Beverly's all caught up. Robin's still working on clue number 6. Mimsy started late. Delia said, I'm so behind. You're going to have an extra 7 days, Delia, to catch up. And even if you don't catch up, I just hope that you're enjoying the process. Rory's all caught up. Mimsy said, advice for those that don't have yardage. Well, this week, I gave you a total number of inches. So let's go down to the cutting mat because I'm going to show you if you're cutting from scraps, right, or fat quarters and things like that. What I did this week is, pardon me, y'all have been running around like a crazy person. Like I had everything ready to go. And then I found 5 other things to do right before we got started. And I've been running up and down the stairs. And where I had an hour and a half left, and before I knew it, I had 15 minutes to get ready. I was like, oh, so pardon me for a second. So this week, this is clue number 7, y'all. This is it. It's 1-page PDF. We're working with the B and D fabrics, right? So B and D fabrics. You might be using different colors, right? But primarily B and D fabrics. And we're just cutting strips. So Mimsy, what I did this week is you can see if you're cutting from yardage, I told you how many strips to cut. But I also gave you a total number of inches. So if you are piecing together strips and bits and fat quarter strips and all that other stuff, then what you would want to do is pay attention to the total number of inches that you need these strips to equal out to. So instead of cutting 2 strips from 43-inch fabric, which would be cutting from yardage, you might need 7 strips that are smaller in length, but when you sew them together, you get a total of 78 inches. Okay? I'm hoping that'll help. Shelley, there are 15 clues altogether. Dawn's waiting till the end of the videos. Dawn, I highly recommend that, especially if you are working from scraps like Mimsy, or if you are changing the colorway and you're not quite sure which colors you want to use, waiting till the end would be perfect. Ooh, Jacqueline's on vacation. Thank you, Sheila. I love my shirt too, little kitty. Okay, so let's go over all of these strips, and let me just pull this over because I have already pre-cut mine. I did that this morning. This past week has just gone by so fast, y'all. The weeks are just going by so quick. I mean, it felt like we had 2 months before we even started this project, And today we are on week number 7 already. Like, I just cannot believe how fast the weeks are going. So let's go over the numbers, okay? So from the B fabric, in my case, and in many of your cases, that's like the magenta looking fabric, right? Magenta, or it's kind of rose colored. You might call it red. These two strips here. So I'm going to tell you what I did, because before we talk about cutting strips, all 4 of these strips that we're making in this clue, we're going to be using for borders in our quilt. So while it seems like this is a very boring clue, just cutting strips and sewing them together, these 4 strips, once we sew them together, we're going to have 4 strips, are going to play a huge vital role in the construction of this quilt top. So while it seems like a boring clue, these are actually really important elements of our quilt. And you'll see that as we start putting everything together. Yes, that includes your seam allowances. All right, so before I ever even cut these finished strips, this is what I did. And I like to share this in case you're really new, and if you're working from yardage, you're like, oh, I'm so nervous to cut into these yards of fabric, right? So this is what I did to get my finished strips, because I did starch and press these fabrics before I cut the finished strips. Okay, and I feel like, because I like to use steam in my iron, sometimes if you don't starch and press your fabrics before you cut them, if you cut them true to size, like what I'm asking you to do here, and you steam or you use starch down the road, your strip, if you haven't already done it, might shrink up a little bit, right? So I like to go ahead and just starch and press before I cut the finished size. So I'm going to tell you how I did that. Before I do that, I'm going to take a sip of my drink and slow down. Whew. These last 15 minutes, I've just been hustling. Brenda, you just got to scan and cut. So many of you just got to scan and cut, and so did I. We're going to talk about that at the end of clue number 7 today. All right, focus, Lisa. From the B fabric, we're going to talk about these 2 thinner strips right here. You're going to want to cut 2 strips if you're working from yardage, right? 2 strips that are 1.5 inches wide. So what I did is I unrolled my yardage on my cutting mat, okay? And I measured over, with just one single layer, right, folded in half, I measured over 4 inches. And I cut myself a section of 4 inches. And I took that over to my pressing board, and I starched it and I pressed it. And then I brought it back over to my cutting mat, and from that 4-inch strip, I cut my finished 2 strips that are 1.5 inches wide. Does that make sense? That gave me room to give me a nice clean edge. Cut my 2 strips, and I had a small smidgen of fabric that maybe was about 1/2 inch that was wasted, okay? But that allows me to starch and press before cutting a precise 1.5 inches. Debbie, I'm going to go over that here in just a second. I have all kinds of stuff for y'all today. So I measured over, cut a section 4 inches, starched, pressed it, brought it back, and then cut from the 4 inches my 2 1.5 inch strips. That gave me that. And then we are cutting 8 strips. Here's my 8 strips of the B fabric that measure 4.5 inches wide. you'll want a total of 302 inches altogether, okay? Now, when I cut this, what I did is I folded my yardage completely in half, okay? And I lined up the raw edges. That gave me 4 layers of fabric. You know what I'm saying? So this is one and this is one. Let's pretend like I have not cut this from the yardage, right? And all of my yardage is still here. I brought the 2 ends of my yardage together like this. And I shook it out and laid it nice and flat on my cutting mat like that, right? Let's pretend the yardage continues that way. I gave myself a nice clean cut. And then I measured over 19 inches and I cut. That gave me 2 19-inch sections. I starched both of those sections and then brought them back. And from that, I was able to cut 8 4.5-inch strips. Am I making that really confusing? I hope not. Denise said, do you have to download the clues each week? Will they go if not? All the clues will be available until after clue 15. And then once we're done with clue 15, a week after, I'm removing all the links for the clues, and then it's going in my Etsy shop as one pattern. So if you're just coming in now, you can go back and get all previous clues. They're in each one of the videos. All right, I think y'all are keeping on board with me. I hope I'm not making that too confusing, and I'm just sharing how I was able to starch and press with very little waste. All right, I know a lot of you are worried about how much more fabric you'll need, and you're worried about wasting it, and so I'm just sharing what I did in order to be able to pre-press and starch it and not waste very much fabric at all. All right, so there's my 8 strips of the B fabric. We're going to join these together here in just a second. From the B fabric, I call this one the chocolate one because to me it kind of looks chocolatey. Although in this lighting it looks extremely way darker than it actually is in person. All right, so from the D fabric, whichever one you're using, you're going to need 5 strips that are 4.5 inches wide, for a total of 191 inches. That's after they're all sewn together, right? So to get my 5 strips, I did not double them up because, 5 is an odd number where we could cut 8 strips from both layers equally. The 5 strips, I just unrolled my yardage on the table and I measured over hold on one second. Oh yeah, okay. I thought that said 2 3.5 inch. I can't even decipher my own handwriting. Okay, so I rolled my yardage out. It was one single layer on my cutting mat, and I measured over 23.5 inches, and I cut that section. So my section I brought to the pressing board was 23.5 inches wide, right? I starched and pressed it, brought it back, and from that, I was able to cut my 5 strips of 4.5 inch wide pieces, right? So there's 5 pieces from that 23.5 inch section with very little waste. And then we're cutting 8 strips that are 2.5 inches wide. You'll need a total of 302 inches for this section, right? And to do this, again, I took my yardage and I folded it in half. So when I'm cutting, I'm actually cutting the 2 layers, right? So what I did is I folded it in half and I measured over 11 inches and I cut. So that gave me two 11-inch sections that I pressed, starched and pressed, right? Brought back to the cutting mat, and then I was able to cut 8 strips that are 2.5 inches wide. On all of my strips, I did go ahead and remove the salvage edge with a nice clean cut on all of my strips. Okay? The videos will be up indefinitely forever, Tammy. So you can always come back and revisit them. It's just the patterns are free until a week after Clue 15. So now's the time to get them, right? All right, so I am going to, with you today, and it's only going to take just a few minutes, join all these strips together. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. And but before we move on, I did want to talk about how much more fabric we need for this quilt, right? Because I know several of you are interested in that part, because some of our fabrics are dwindling down, right? So let's just talk about that for a second. Here's the awesome news, is that next week's clue, and here's just like a hint for next week, if you're wondering. Next week, we are not cutting any pieces of fabric. None. We will be working with clues that we've already done. Okay? And it's a sewing clue. So we're not cutting any yardage. We're not cutting any pieces. None of that stuff next week. We're just sewing next week. All right? And a section of our quilt will come together next week. So what I did is I went through the remaining clues and I wrote down, if you're wondering, if you're looking at what you have left, and I know some of you have made some cutting boo-boos and you're wondering, should you order more fabric? So I think this is going to be really helpful for you. In the clues that we do have left where you're going to be cutting fabric, we're going to be cutting from the A fabric. If you're using yardage, you're going to need about 22 more inches from that yardage. So you can take a look and see how much you have left. From the C fabric, the darker of the two teal colors, right? From the C fabric, you're going to need the same amount, another 22 inches. And from the E fabric, you're only going to need a small smidgen of E fabric. I would say, because it's going to be applique that you're doing with E, if you were to cut a 4-inch strip, if you're cutting your pieces by hand, one 4-inch strip would give you enough to do what we need left for E. If you are working with a scan and cut, the 4-inch strip would work, or like at least a piece that is like 8.5 by 11. Okay? And that is it. We are done after this week with D and B fabrics. Now that's not to say we still have a binding and backing. And the D fabric, I think, is what I got to do my binding. I cannot remember now. I have to check. I did buy enough of my fabric to use one of these fabrics as a binding. And I can't remember if it's this one or this one. I have to look. But as far as pieces for the quilt top, that is what we need. A, C, and E. 22 more inches, 22 more inches, and about a 4-inch strip, or if you're using a scan and cut, I'd say 8.5 by 11, somewhere in that range. I hope that is really helpful for you. In case you've been worried, because you see the fabric dwindling down, right? And you're kind of, and that's the nature of a mystery quilt. You're wondering what is coming next. So there's your clue for next week, a little hint. And there's the fabric requirements for the rest of our clues for the rest of this top. many of our clues from here on out, we are going to be actually sewing units together, and the quilt top will start revealing itself. So we're going to start getting some really cool ideas about what this quilt is going to look like. Tammy said, or Karen said, it was D for border, Lisa. Oh, that's the one I got for my binding. I can't remember. I have to look, but I do think that that's right. I can't remember. Oh, yeah, okay, duh. Y'all just reminded me. You have notes at the bottom that D is used for binding. Thank you for reminding me. Fabric D requirements include yardage for the binding. I was thinking ahead of myself, and then I didn't even read my notes. That's kind of how this week has been, y'all. It's crazy. All right, so 2 ways that you can sew these border strips together. I used to sew them together the very easy way. And I mean, I'm going to show you that way. So if you're extremely new and you're like joining border strips together on a bias intimidates you, I'm going to let you know it's okay to join them along the raw edge. I, however, will be joining my strips on the bias. So let me just show you both ways, okay? And I don't really have a preference on which way you do. If you're joining your border strips on the bias, you're going to lose some inches. Where if you join them together on the raw edge with a straight seam, your border fabric is going to give you many more inches. I have included the inches you need to join them on the bias, okay? Yeah, Heather said, past Lisa was looking out for today. Y'all still had to remind me. Okay, so let me pull these over. And I will have to thread my machine, so y'all give me a second. The cats were in here, and I don't like to leave thread in the machine because I have one cat that if he sees the thread is in there, he is going to start chomping away at it. So here's my strips we're working with, and y'all just give me a second so I can thread this top thread. And I'm going to be using a thread color that I probably wouldn't use for these pieces, but I do want you, hopefully this will stand out today. I don't know that it will, but maybe. It might not because the inside, you know, the wrong side is kind of light. But this is the fabric, this is the thread I have close by, so this is what we're using. Let me just get this in the machine. And that just takes a second. All right. If you want to join these strips together, let me bring you over to the sewing machine so you can see what I'm doing. We have 2 1.5 inch strips, right? If you wanted to just join these together by putting both right sides together and sewing that seam. Hold on one second. I'm not going to actually do it, but I just want to demonstrate. If you wanted to just line them up like that and sew just like that to join these 2 strips, I personally have no qualms about that. Okay? For many of you, that's much easier to do. I'm going to be joining my strips together on the bias so that my seam is not going straight through my strip. It'll go on a diagonal, just like how you would normally put together or sew together strips for binding, right? So I'm just going to open up one long strip, and you can't see everything off to the left, but there's my first strip, right? I'm going to bring over a pin, and I'm going to bring over a ruler. So there's that. I'm going to bring in my next strip, and there's only 2 for this part of the clue, right? 2 1.5 by 1.5. I'm going to lay with the right side facing down right along here like that. And I personally like to leave a little smidgen right there so that I can see right on that corner right there. And then I take myself a little ruler like this, and see that diagonal line going like that? That is, it doesn't tell me. What is that, the 90? This ruler, it doesn't tell me. We're going to line up that diagonal line with the long edge of this strip that's laying there like that. We're going to line it up nice and straight, just like that. See that? That diagonal line is lined up to my strip. So what that does is it gives me an exact line from corner to corner, just like that. And I'm just going to take a marking pen and mark that line right there. You might also find it helpful. Let me get a pen. I can't take this ruler up or everything's going to slide right down in the floor. You might also find it helpful to just go ahead, not that pen, and just pin right there just to keep it together while you move it right over to the sewing machine. So in this case, we're not really worried about 1/4 inch seam allowances, right? We're just going to be sewing directly on that line that we just drew. And I personally like to lower my stitch length for joining binding and joining border strips. So for me, I'm just using a straight stitch, and I've lowered it to 2.0. If you find that your fabric is bunching up on your machine, you might need to increase that stitch length a little bit. Oh, it's a 45, not a 90. Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. I'm so grateful for y'all. Okay, so I'm going to just sew right on that line. Okay. It's a 45, Lisa, not a 90. See, and I get it started, and then I just take that pin out. That pin is really just there to help me move everything, and so nothing is shifting in the meantime, right? This color thread is like a cream color. So there is my join, and when we open it up, it's one continuous long binding strip now, right? We can go ahead and cut this extra triangle off, and we want to leave a good 1/4 inch seam allowance there. And I don't measure it out, I just kind of eyeball it. But about a generous 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we're going to press that here in just a minute. So now our 2 strips is one big long strip. We'll press that here in a minute. We're going to go through and do the same exact thing for each of these strips. I don't think it's going to take that long, but I just have so much in my way here. And usually when I'm joining binding or border strips, see the short amount of table I have because of the live, I kind of move everything close. Usually I set my my strips of fabric right here, and the machine is pushed back on the table some. So I think for me it's going to be a little awkward, so please be patient as we're dealing with the awkwardness. All right. Let's go ahead and bring over, what is that, the 4.5 strips of the B fabric. And you know what? Sorry, I'll readjust. I do have to make some room. So there we go. Yay, okay. See how I have that laid out over here, right there? To me, that is just so much more easier. All right, so I want you to see me over here? See my strips right here? They're just stacked up. All 8 of them are just stacked. And I want you to reach over and grab the very top first single layer. When you lift it up, here's the wrong side, right? And the wrong side's facing up. It's the same strip. Take the first end and just push it right out of the way. Now we're going to bring up the end and we're going to lay it just like that on our table. See that? Now we have strip number 2 on top, and we're going to take the very first layer of that, and we're going to bring up that first layer and lay it. Oh, this one needs to go right side up. There we go. Turn the first strip right side up. Now we're bringing in the second one, and that one goes right side down. And I'm going to even just throw a little pin in there to keep it in place. And for this one, I like to work with a little bit of a bigger ruler. There we go. That one says 45. Had I used this one first, I would have actually looked like I knew what I was doing. We're going to line up that 45-inch line to that border strip, lining it up right here at that corner, and that 45 is right along the edge of that first strip on the table. And there is our sewing line. Okay, and I know it might be awkward if it's the first couple of times you've joined binding or borders together like this. But what it does is it distributes the seams in your borders so that when other parts of your quilt are sewn to your borders, there's not a lot of seams in one area, okay? We're just sewing right along that line. And I don't even cut it off the machine yet, okay? So now, right down here, we have strip number 2. I'm going to lift up strip number 2, and I'm going to flip it so that it's right side up. See that? And now strip number 3 is on the top of my stack. I'm going to take that top layer, and we're putting it right down on top. We want to make sure that it is nice and straight right there, right? We don't want any wavy, wonky, willy-nilly borders. So we do want to make sure that everything is lined up straight. If you join it and your borders are kind of cockeyed or tilted to one side, you will have some waviness in your borders. All right, so you just want to make sure it's nice and straight. We're going to take that 45 again. There we go. Line it up at the corner. Draw your line. Just like that. And I think we'll go through the B borders like this because the D borders are going to be exactly the same. So I don't think y'all want to sit here and watch me the whole time do that. But we'll do the B borders together and then I'll show you pressing them, right? Just make sure everything is laying nice and flat. I'm not stretching anything out. And I think, what are we going to have, 7 seams to join everything together on this section? All right, I'm going to lift up the remainder of this strip and flip it right side up. Now I have my top strip down here. I'm going to lift up the first layer and bring it over. And I just like to throw a little pin in there so nothing moves. And then mark my 45. Sushi May, where you going, girl? You might want to use a heat erasing pen or water soluble pen to make your markings. Today I'm just using a regular ballpoint pen so you can see it nice and clearly. We're going to rotate it and sew. I was just trying to make sure that my cat's not trying to get out of my studio. I don't know where she's going. All right, we're going to bring up the rest of that strip. Right side facing up. Here's our next strip. We're bringing in the top layer. And so even if this is the first time you've done it this way, if you give it a try after the first couple of little flips and sews, I do think you'll get the hang of it. And you might be able to accurately eyeball this sewing line. For me, I just like to have the safety of that straight line to work with. All right, and we're flipping this end up. And we're pulling up the next one. Many of you are seasoned quilters and you know exactly what I'm doing. You might even join them together the first way that I showed. And some of you got the clue this morning and you're already done joining your border pieces together, right? I know some of you are super fast. All right, we're going to just draw ourselves that little line. Now what you don't see, because it doesn't fit, is there's a big awkward mess pile of strips behind that sewing needle. And that's okay. We're not going to pay attention to that yet. We're just going to keep sewing right through this stack. And I think we only have 2 more strips left to add. So we're going to flip that top one and bring in the next one. Find my pin. There we go. Line up that ruler. I want to thank my moderators today for helping out. And if you have questions for me, you might want to hold on for just a minute. If there are general questions that everyone will know, feel free to keep asking, but just know that I'm not going to see your questions for a few minutes. All right, we're going to flip the end of this strip up, and we have 1 more to join. So when you get to this very bottom strip, the very last one, you're going to lift up the first layer, and we're going to join that together just like we have been. And this is going to be the end of the very long strip that we've pieced together. So we're not doing anything with this remaining piece, the remaining end. That stays loose just like that. And I'll bring in the ruler one more time. 90-degree angle. All right. And there's that last line. And here's the very end of that pieced strip, right? Now you could just leave that on and bring in your next set and just continue stitching, right? In the same manner, you're going to join the next 2 D strips together. Same thing. I'm going to go ahead and take this off. I'm going to put that pin up. And we're going to bring this whole thing, because this is what it looks like behind the sewing needle, right? All of this piles up behind your machine. We're going to go ahead and bring all this over to the cutting table. There we go. There we go. All right, cutting mat. What I'm going to do, because sometime in the upcoming next couple days, I'm going to go ahead and join my D strips together, just like I showed you with the previous 2 strips. But here's my big pile of the B 4.5 by 4.5. And let me get this iron on, because we're going to go ahead and press these seams. Okay. Because I chain stitched them together, they're all connected, right? So you have this little connecting thread in between each one of these joins. I'm just going to cut that. And you can do this with a rotary cutter if you prefer, but I'm just going to use my scissors, and we're going to remove a good portion of this extra triangle, leaving a generous 1/4 inch seam allowance, right? You could certainly take this whole thing over to your cutting mat and use your rotary cutter if you're more comfortable doing that. And see how that just joins on a diagonal, on a 45-degree angle? Your binding strips. And then we'll come to the next section and cut that thread and cut off that extra bit. And we're just going to work through each one of these joins and do that. And I save these because I'm an applique quilter at heart. And believe it or not, that's a good 2 little good chunks of fabric that you never know might be the perfect size for an applique in the future. Not necessarily with this quilt though. I'm just trying to be careful because my hands are shaky anyway, but when I'm live, it can be even worse, and I don't want to slip and cut my sewing line, right? That would stink. All right, just working our way through this big long strip. I can't wait to show you some of the goodies I got at the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival. We had a lot of fun. We did. I had some shopping therapy. And I have some goodies that I can share with you here in just a little bit. This is the last join. So, yeah, if you're like me, you're going to have, what, like 14 of these little triangles? That's some good fabric for applique. Throw those in your stash. And then you're going to be left with long strips, right? So I have my thinner 1.5 inch strip and my 4 inch strip right here. And all we're doing at this point is pressing some seams. You can press your seams to the side if you like, right? There's some of us who like to press our seams to the side. Here lately, in the last few months, I've been pressing my seams open. Which I never thought, you know, that I would say that I'm pressing my seams open. I always agreed that they do lay flatter if you press them open. It's just more time consuming. And maybe that's why I'm so short of time here lately, is because I've been pressing my seams open. It takes forever. I don't know, but here lately, I've been pressing these seams open on almost all of my stuff. But you could press them to the side if you want to, right? I'm not the boss. But I've been just working that seam open. And I like to take my fingernail and just give it a little pre-press like that. And then press. Are we also sewing the smaller strips? You're going to join all of your strips together in this same manner. So at the end of clue number 7, what you're going to have is you're going to have 4 long strips. One B strip that's only 1.5 inches wide. One B strip, this one, that's 4.5 inches wide. Then you're going to have a D strip that's 4.5 inches wide. And you're going to have a D strip that is 2.5 inches wide. So you're going to have 4 border strips all together after joining everything together this week. Y'all see me use the steam? I'm a steamer. Not everybody is. But because I'm a steamer, that's one reason why I went ahead and pre-starched and steamed and pressed these fabrics before ever cutting them, right? So if I use steam now, I don't have to worry about them drawing up any at this point. Any of the drawing up, I feel like I got rid of a lot of the drawing up when I pre-pressed before I cut these strips. Not to say it won't happen again, but the chances are much slimmer. Do you know what I'm saying? And we're just working our way, just like we're making a binding, except this one's really wide, right? And as simple as this clue is, these are very important pieces that we're doing this week. They're going to give us separation and division in our medallion style quilt top. So I know it seems like, you know, if you are looking for a really fun, exciting clue this week, this might seem like a letdown, but it's very, very important part of the quilt top. And let me just tell y'all also that the clues we have left to do without giving too much of the mystery away, we're not doing anything. If you've done all the clues up until now, we're not doing anything harder than that. Okay? Matter of fact, if you've done all the clues up until now, you are stress-free because you can do the rest of the quilt. The clues that you haven't seen yet. All right, we're almost through with this longer strip. Thank you, so Terry. Delia said, do you starch all the clues when done? Not usually. I usually like to starch before I start cutting my pieces for that clue. And then I kind of don't have to. But sometimes I will press my clues when I'm done. So like the 4 middle pieces we've been working on, anytime I add to those pieces, I do press those pieces just nice and flat after I'm done working with them. But I have not starched them anymore since the very, very beginning. I really feel like that starch stays in there, right? Because we haven't washed any of that starch out yet. I do feel like the starch stays in there, just like the sizing that is in this fabric, because I have not pre-washed any of it. So I don't usually starch again anything, but that's just me. All right, we have worked all the way through the end of this. This is now one large border piece. I want you to just set it aside and wait before you do anything else after this point. We'll go ahead and press the one seam on this smaller one. Do you have any guesses where this little tiny border is going to go? You can even press the seam from the back side and then turn it around and press from the front if you want to. But look how nice and clean that joint is. And so here is our 1.5 inch strip. And see the little folds from where the yardage was folded in half? You could, if you have some extra few minutes, you could get rid of those little fold marks. I just don't usually worry about it because as I'm adding these borders to whatever I'm adding them to, they get pressed along the way, right? So if I have free time, I'll go through and just press those little fold marks. But yeah. So 2 B strips, 2 D strips. You're going to join them just like this, and then you're done with clue 7, and you're going to put these strips away to the side, and we're not touching them until I tell you to bring them back out. So Terry, this is a grunge, but This is grunge from Marshall Dry Goods. Like, it's not the brand grunge, but it was, hold on, I'll tell you. Like on the first sheet, A fabric was a Michael Miller fabric. And then the rest, I got grunge fabrics, but they're from Marshall Dry Goods. And they're called Grunge Burgundy, Grunge Dark Teal, Grunge Chocolate, and Grunge Caribbean. However, I believe grunge is a name brand manufactured by someone else. Correct? Will it border the medallion in the center? Several of you have just asked. Yes. Wanda said, I save paper rolls to wrap my binding strips around to keep them smooth until ready to use. That's a great idea, Wanda. And you could do the same thing with these borders. You could absolutely do that. That's a great idea. Anitra, thank you. Moda manufactures grunge. Thank you. I have a hard time keeping track of all of the brands, the manufacturers, all of the names. That is not my strong suit, y'all. Not at all. There's just so much out there. I have a hard time keeping track of like my cat's names and stuff like that. Whew. Okay. So for me, as of right now, just talking to you, what I have left to do is sew together my D borders and put them aside. And I'm still working on clue number 4. I am halfway done. We did a quilt retreat with Patreon last Sunday. Was it last Sunday? And I was able to get all of my orange peels done from the last clue and half of my clue number 4 done. And then, so I still have half of clue number 4 to do. Do y'all want to see what I got from the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival? Do you want to see? Do you want to see? I'm just shuffling stuff out of the way so I can move some stuff in. I'm going to move in some stuff. I think the gray is easier to look at. Oh no, don't drop it. All right, here's a preview. There you go. Okay. All right, y'all know Anitra and I ventured into wool applique, which I have a confession. That project that we started together on a difficulty level was probably a 20, like expert level. And it was the first wool project that I'd ever done. So I just dived in that, Anitra, and I'm halfway done with it. And I just put it to the side. One day I will come back to that. But I feel like I skipped 20 levels and just dove in. But I love the wool applique, and I've messed around with a couple little smaller wool projects since just putting that project to the side. So you know, I made a small investment in some wool when I started that project. And I bought a few wool fat quarters since then. Well, we went to the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival, and they had lots of these bags. Epicurean Boutique. They are in Occoquan, Virginia. I'm going to pull up their website here in a second in case you're interested. They had these bags, stash bags of wool for $25. I feel it's a great deal. because you know I want to venture into more wool applique stuff. And look at all the different swatches and colors. And when you're doing wool applique, a lot of the times you're working in smaller pieces, right? And I feel like, look at all of the different colors I got in this bag for 25 bucks. And it's perfect size pieces, because what if I was doing a little ornament and I just needed a smidgen of red, right? I don't want to cut into my fat quarters to get a smidgen of red. So 25 bucks. I felt like maybe I should have got 2 of these bags. I don't know. So, yeah, I got that. I felt like I should have got another one. I don't know. And then from the same booth, because look at this, y'all. This was also from Ecurean Boutiques. And I'm going to put this little label up close. Can you see their... I'm going to put the website up on the screen here in a second. Look, this pattern is called Meow. It looks like a little stuffed animal cat. And my plan is to make 3 of these to look like my 3 cats. I cannot wait to do this. And so, of course, that bag of scraps is going to come in really handy, because I got lots of colors without having to cut into my yardage of wool, which is not a lot, but I don't want to cut it for little pieces, right? Like the nose, the little thing around the collar, the face. Isn't that cute? It is so dang cute. And then, so when I think of wool applique and my level coming in, because it's not just working with wool and smaller pieces, it's all of the handwork and the hand stitching. You can sew it by your machine, but I would really like to develop the patience for all of the handwork. But I really feel like this is more, maybe not even beginner level, but more like intermediate. It's 4 pieces that come together. You string them together somehow with buttons, and it spells out home, right? Isn't that adorable? This is pattern number 377. It's called Home. I love it. And I'm looking forward to doing that. So the bottom has 2 houses, another house, a birdhouse. There's some lazy daisy stitches. Look, I'm learning some of the stitch names. There's some lazy daisy stitches up there. So it's opportunities to develop your skills with hand stitches without feeling so overwhelming. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And then, okay, so we were having lunch, and I forget now, because I went 2 days, and Danielle was there both days. I can't remember if it was the first day or the second day, but she showed me she had gone to the Floriani booth. So any of you who, well, Floriani carries a lot of stuff, right? They carry thread, needles, stabilizers, all kinds of stuff. But this here is a packet of samples of different stabilizers. So if you're into applique, if you're into embroidery, machine embroidery, all kinds of stuff like that, I would check out to see if you're going to a show and they're there, if they have these, because this was free. It was a sample, but it has a stack, and it's all labeled of all of the different kinds of stabilizers that they carry. And you want to know what's really nice about this? Is this is a great tool if you haven't ordered their stabilizers before and you have a project coming up and you're wondering, what stabilizer do I get? It's so hard to tell if you go to the website without actually seeing it in person or touching it, right? So there are samples of each one of their tearaway stabilizers. Like there's a heavy, a medium, a light, and it tells you what they are. Like this top one, is a heat and stay fusible tearaway. Right? The third one is a stick and wash. The fourth one is a perfect stick. I don't know what that means, but I can research it from there. Right? And then they have cutaways, they have water solubles, they have specialty stabilizers, and fleece stabilizers with samples of all of them. So that you can, before you buy, you can actually see what it is and touch it and feel it in person. So this is a great resource. If you go to a quilt show and Floriani's going to be there, they had these on the table and they were super nice. And yeah, see if you can grab yourself one of these packets. Rosetta Rose, 8 4.5-inch strips times what? Let me bring it back. Did you come in? You must have come in after. It might be easier for you to go back to the very beginning on the replay. Because I went through a lot of stuff. And I even said how I pre-cut it so I could starch and press it. 8 4.5 strips from 43-inch fabric. Yes. If you're cutting from fat quarters or scraps, the main thing to keep in mind here is that I gave you a total inches. So you might want to measure it out if you're cutting from fabric that is not yardage. You need a total of 302 inches. Okay? So you could cut from fabric that is not 43 inches wide. Just add up the total amount. All right, goodies. Applique. Okay, so with wool applique, even though I have some applique needles, and I really love working with the pearl cottons, and last year I invested in 2 bundles of different colorway bundles of pearl cotton. So I have a little stash of pearl cotton. But I went to this booth, and I'm going to share this website with you too. Because she had a booth, and let me just tell you, y'all, I don't know if you've ever gone to a show and you've gone to this booth, Applique. That lady there can hand sew some applique like nobody's business. And I'm going to tell you, she was doing small little turned edge applique. The hexies, I'm going to tell you, they were not even 1/2 inch big hexies. Turned edge, finished, 1/2 inch or smaller. I didn't measure them. They were super tiny with a turn. She's like a master with hand sewing and hand applique. I'm just going to tell you. I was super impressed. Impressed enough to invest in a couple of little things. So I got some applique needles. These are tiny, tiny, tiny. The hole in them, I think I'm going to have a magnifying glass to thread these needles. They are super tiny. They are so tiny, I'm not going to take them out of this little container because I don't want to lose them. Let me just tell you how long they are. Size 11. I don't know if that means anything to you. But these needles are only 1.5 inches long, right? They're not as long as this container. And I think there's like 15 of them in there. They're super tiny. But let me just tell you, and she was demonstrating these needles. They went through fabric so easy, like butter, right? They just glided right through. And I was like, wow, they're so easy. You would never be able to use a pearl cotton with these needles. Ooh. Maybe not even a DMC single strand of floss. Like if you separate the strands, that's how little the hole is for the eye of the needle. So I got some invisible thread. I got their invisible thread, and she demonstrated this. And it says you can use this by hand or by machine. I myself am not a huge fan of working with invisible thread in my sewing machine. I just find it super frustrating. I got it for the hand use, okay? But what was really cool about this thread is that she laid some out and pressed her iron right on it, and it did not melt or distort or go wavy or none of that stuff. So I was like, okay, because you know we worry about that when we're working with these kinds of threads, right? That they're going to melt in our quilts or our projects. So yeah, she put her iron right on this stuff and it did not even phase it. I just now opened that for the first time, so that's what it looks like when you pull it out. So yeah, if you're working with an applique and you're not quite sure what color thread to use, that might be the perfect solution. We shall see. It'll be my first time using it. And then I got, just let me tell you, I don't make a commission from these people. I'm not sponsored by these people, any of these people. Not even these people. I'm just telling you what I've spent my money on and why. So these, and they had 3 different sizes, y'all. I had never seen scissors like this. Have you seen scissors like this? Like, where have you been all my life? 3 holes, micro serrated medium scissors. They had the smaller ones, and they had ones that are bigger than this. And so here's my reasoning and my logic between buying these scissors. For medium and large pieces, open curves, and straight lines, its particularity lies in scissors in the handle. That does not make any sense. All 5 fingers are used to prevent strained joints. Yes, right? So that's important to me. These scissors sharpen themselves. That's another good point. I was like, okay, I'm sold. And then holds the fabric and does not slide forward. I felt that was important because, I mean, y'all know I have the essential trimmers. Sometimes, some days are better than others. But what I do have, anytime I'm doing fussy cutting, which I do a lot when I'm doing with wool stuff, my fingers really hurt really bad, and I have a hard time. If I'm cutting something smaller, my hands start shaking more, and I don't have a lot of control with the scissors that I have been using. So let me show you how you hold these scissors, right? You do your pinky, these 2 fingers, and that finger goes there. So this feels really awkward to me at first, right? But then the more I used them, I was like, whoa, I feel like I have way better control with these. I really do. So I held them, and was at the booth for quite a few minutes, right? Just holding them and working with them. She had lots of scraps there I could cut. These cut so cleanly. I was like sold. I think Sheila got a pair too. I think she did. I think she got that and some needles. But yes, so these are now my sole. They're like for wool applique. That's what that is. I'm going to pull up the website in case you're interested. Again, I don't sponsor them, but I just like to share because it was the first time I'd ever seen these, right? They've probably been to the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival every year, and I just probably walked by the booth because up until last year, wool applique was something that I only wanted to learn about and hadn't gotten into. And so this stuff, I just probably walked past until this year. So there's those. And then, so yeah, I learned about a needlecraft guild in my area. I'm going to check them out. So that was interesting. they do all kinds of needlecraft stuff. So they do knitting, crochet, cross stitch, canvas work, silk, thread, embroidery. Doesn't that sound lovely? Punch needle, beading. Y'all know I'm all about that. Quilting, rug hooking, crewel embroidery, and field trips to needlecraft shops. I am so I'm going to look into joining this guild. I do believe, because that sounds like everything that I want to learn. That sounds so much fun. So yeah, if you go to a quilt show and you walk past all the vendors and you look at all the quilts, make sure to check out the tables for the guilds, because I didn't even know that there was a needlecraft guild in my area. So I'm kind of excited to check that out. And then if y'all are on Facebook, then this is old news for you, because I posted a picture of me holding the box, right? I did get the Scan and Cut. What number is this one? It's the SDX 325. That's what I did. Y'all, I did it. I've talked about it for a couple years. I just did it. Lisa, they're serrated. I can't say that word right. So when you open and close them, they kind of just sharpen themselves. She said, never, ever, ever sharpen them yourself. You'll mess them up. So yes, okay. So many of y'all are like, why are you upgrading from your CM350? What's the difference between your CM350 and your new SDX 325? Right? And many of you just bought machines recently. I know that. And some of you are in the market for a machine and you're wondering which one to get. Let me just tell you. This machine, the SDX 325, I feel like I can give you really honest opinions because I'm not sponsored by them. They don't pay me anything, right? So I feel like if you don't have an embroidery machine that is the latest and greatest that this works in conjunction with, this machine here, the Innovis 325, I will eventually remember that, is a little overkill and might be, for the price, overkill for, because a machine like the 125 or the 85 might be just what you need. As far as sales at the show, this machine was not on sale at the show. So what the show special is I bought the machine at the normal price, but what I did get was this machine, and this is why I particularly bought this machine, and the roller might go with other machines too, right? But buying this machine at the show, I got the additional vinyl roll that attaches to this, that cuts your vinyl right off of the roll. I got that for free, right? And I got a padded duffel bag carry-in case for my machine for free. So those were like the show incentives to buying there at the show, which was about $100 savings, right? About $100. So what this machine has that my CM350 did not have. When I bought my CM350, I had to buy a $50 activation card to hook up my machine wirelessly to my computer. This machine comes wireless already. You don't have to buy additional cards to activate the wireless. That's nice after spending that much money. It has a 5-inch LCD screen. If you're looking at a 85 model Scan and Cut, the screen is much smaller. That's just one of the biggest differences between the machines. They both work the same. This is a 5-inch screen. This machine will talk wirelessly to a Brother embroidery machine. I have a Bernina, so it's kind of a moot point. But had I had a Brother embroidery machine that would talk to it, I could send information from this machine to my embroidery machine, which would be lovely. That is a feature that I cannot use, right? So let's just see. Converts PES, PHC, and PHX embroidery files for drawing, embossing, and foiling data. The DPI on the scanner of this machine is slightly higher than my CM350. I have not scanned anything with the machine yet. And I'm wondering, with a better resolution scanner, if it would reduce some of the issues. Sometimes I would scan a pattern with my CM350 and it wouldn't pick up a shape or two, or sometimes it would combine two shapes that are sitting really close together. And I'm just wondering, with a little bit better resolution with the scanner, if it still continues to do that. I haven't tested it out yet. This also has an auto blade. It came with an auto blade, and it came with a fabric blade. What it did not come with was the rotary blade. So I have to still buy that in addition, which I have not done yet. And the difference between this machine and my CM350 is this one cuts up to 3 millimeters thickness, where I think my CM350 is like 2 millimeters. So I'm wondering, if I got the rotary blade, it should cut out my wool applique pieces very easily, right? I don't know. Eventually I'm going to get the rotary blade. We're going to find out. Let's see, what else? Let's see. Oh, okay, so the difference is, if you were looking at an 85, I forget all the numbers, right? The Scan and Cut 85, it comes in several different colors. That one only has so many pre-loaded designs. This one has 1,303 built-in designs, including 140 quilt patterns and 17 different lettering fonts. So the money price difference that you're paying, a lot of it has to do with the preloaded designs. So that's part of the price, okay? You might not care. You might just work solely with designs you create or SVGs that you've purchased or gotten for free. You might not even care. Like, I don't even care about like 95% of the preloaded stuff in here. I would never use. Seam allowance and sewing guides. Add a seam allowance in 1/4 inch increments to assist you in piecing together your fabric pieces. Brother sewing machine compatible. And this one, instead of just having a clear cover that lays down, this one has built-in storage in the cover, which is kind of nice. That's nice, right? Oh, and the longer mat. So with this machine and many DX models, you have the capability of using the 12-inch by 12-inch mat and the 12-inch by 24-inch mat. And but that's not specific just to this model. That's on, I think, most, or if not all, of your DX models. I could be wrong. But anyway, so that's what I did, y'all. I did not get a scanning mat. No. It did not come with a scanning mat. I feel like for the price point, can I just be honest with you? Let me tell you how much I paid for this. $8.99 or $8.79 or $8.39. I will tell you specifically. Let's look at my receipt here. $833.99. That's a lot of money. I did get the roller for free. I did get the duffel bag, this padded, very nice bag for free. I feel like that's nice, especially if I want to take my machine on the go to a class or something, right? So that's nice. But I feel like $833. Throw in a rotary cutter, brother. Come on. $833. Throw in a rotary blade. Throw in a scanning mat. Come on. Really? So let me just tell you. So what all this came with was an auto blade and holder. I feel like they should give you a replacement one too, right? So this is me on my soapbox for just a minute. I feel like they should give you an auto blade holder, and at least one replacement blade for a backup blade, please. Standard Tech adhesive mat. That's a standard 12 by 12 mat. This is what gets me, y'all. I just paid $833. Even if you buy the machine that's $323, I don't care. They're going to give you one piece of cardstock? Throw in a pad of paper, even if it's 10 pieces. What's 10 pieces of cardstock? Why are you only going to put one 12-inch by 12-inch piece of cardstock in the box for me to play with when I just bought the machine? Come on. I got the pin holder, which I feel like that pin holder should be, like, I think I'm going to see if my universal pin holder from my CM350 fits it. I don't know if it does or not. I haven't had time to really see what all this machine can do yet. I did cut one piece of fabric out during the quilt retreat with Patreon. But it has the little pin holder. It's the little tiny pins, y'all. It came with the stylus, the spatula, an accessory bag, which is just a little white bag you can put your stylus in, right? The power cord, a getting started guide, and the My Connection activation card for XP, which I think is to hook this up to your embroidery machine. And then it says plus over $720 in added value. So let's see what else it came with. A thin fabric auto blade and holder, which normally sells at $43.98. That came with it. An erasable pin set, which is those little tiny erasable pins that you put in the pin holder. A fabric mat, so it did come with the fabric mat. That's 12.5 by 12.5, normally $39.99. See, if I had to buy that separately, I would have just not bought that and just used my standard mat for everything. It came with 2 pieces of iron-on fabric applique contact sheets. I like my Heat and Bond Light. I will probably never use these two pieces of iron-on applique sheets. Like, I feel like you could have thrown a couple more in there. Built-in one-point designs. So with this machine, you get an additional 1,163 built-in one-point designs. They're calling that a $575 value. Is it? I don't know. Maybe. Built-in quilt designs, you get 140 quilt design blocks programmed in the machine, and they're saying that's a $39 value. So that's what all came with mine. I did buy the 12 by 24 inch mat. I may never have a scanning mat. I've never had one, and I scan stuff all the time on my standard mat. And I'm kind of a stickler and really stingy when it comes to spending. So you hear me complaining about stuff, but that's just because I'm resourceful and I use like my standard mat for everything when they have specialty fabric mats and scanning mats. Like mine came with a fabric mat. That'll probably be the only fabric mat that I ever own, because if I buy replacement mats, I'm sticking to my standard mat. For me, that works. But yeah, so I mean, if you're in the market for a scan and cut, right? I feel like there's so many different machines out there to look for. Your main concern is going to be budget. Do you want to buy a pre-used machine? There's lots of them out there. Like my CM350 is in perfect working order. She works like she's brand new. Many people are upgrading to the newer machines and selling their used ones. And then you have many variations in model numbers, all the way from before the CM350 all the way past this. Like this is not the greatest one. The 325 SDX 325. There's the Disney one, which cost even more than this. I didn't need the Disney designs, right? I would never use them. I'm not going to pay for something I'm never using for sure. But yeah, so all the models in between. I think what you need to consider is your price point, because all of these machines, scan and cut wise, will cut your applique fabric. They will. There's a learning curve with every single model that you can get. You have to get past the intimidation of using it and not being scared to mess up some fabric. In the learning process, you will get it and you will become efficient with whatever machine you decide to get. They all will cut your applique. They'll all cut more than just your applique. Paper, vinyl, all kinds of stuff. But you have to be willing to invest in the learning curve, and you will eventually become very efficient in using your machine. You will, but you have to dive in and you have to be willing to mess up some stuff in the learning process. Then you have to look at things like how many preloaded designs do you want in your machine? Do you want the machine to talk to your embroidery machine? If you don't worry with this one. Get a different one. Don't pay for something you're not going to use, right? Screen size might be an issue for you if you have a hard time seeing smaller screens. Maybe that's a big issue, and maybe you want to get a different version of a machine that has a bigger screen and might be easier for you to see and to work with. So things like that, okay? There we go. Ella said, do you absolutely have to use heat and bond to cut fabric on a scan and cut? No. If you wanted to just cut your quilt piecing pieces, you can do that, and it will even draw your seam allowances on those pieces for you. It's a two-step process, right? So it would go in and draw your seam allowances, and then you take the pin out and you put the blade in, and then it'll go and precisely cut your fabric pieces. So with that, a lot of people just jump in and use the standard mat that's brand new and super sticky to do that with, and then they get frustrated because when they pull the fabric off the mat, the fabric sticks to the mat and pulls and frays the fabric. So you have to learn your mat, you have to learn your blade, how the blade cuts, the blade depth, the blade pressure, and maybe if you just got a scan and cut and you want to use it to cut your fabric, I suggest touching the mat to your shirt. Touch the mat to your shirt, to your jeans, let it pick up some lint so that it's only as tacky as like a Post-it note. Just a little tacky. just enough tack to hold that fabric still while the blade cuts it. And if you have a rotary blade, my understanding, I don't have it yet, but after watching many, many videos, my understanding is a rotary blade does make it easier if you're just cutting fabric without a heat and bond or some kind of fusible on the back side. Now when you touch the mat to your shirt or to your jeans and it picks up all the lint so that you can cut more delicate things like fabric that doesn't have the heat and bond on it, once you're done cutting out your fabric pieces, you can take a baby wipe or just run it under your sink with some water and get that lint off and renew the stickiness back to being sticky, right? So that was my adventures at the quilt show. I got to see lots of friends there. It was fun. We had lunch. Lots of vendors. I still feel like the number of vendors was not the same as pre-COVID, but I feel like there were more vendors there this year than there were last year, so that's encouraging. I feel like the attendance was much higher this year versus last year. That's encouraging. Yeah. I feel like I could have spent a lot more money. There was lots of like thread that I really wanted. There was lots and lots of fabric that I really wanted. But in this transition period of moving, I was like, I think I'll wait till next year to buy up some more fabric. I think I'll wait. But I did get the machine because I've talked about it for like 2 years now. Oh, Ella wants to cut out memory bear pieces. Ella, I would research the rotary blade. That's on my to-do list for getting a rotary blade. But my understanding as far as cutting thicker fabric materials like felt and wool, it does a much cleaner job. And fabric pieces too. I can only tell you what I've heard. I haven't used it. Donna said, how is your house search going? Donna, it is crazy. Those of you that are leaving, thank y'all so much for hanging out today. I'm glad we got to hang out. We're just chit-chatting at this point. I'm going to share the 2 links for the places I got stuff from here in just a second. I'm going to share my screen. Thank you for reminding me though, Sylvia. And before I change my screens too, y'all keep an eye out for this project in my Etsy shop. Isn't that so dang cute? Guess what I'm going to use for this? Patreon. If you are on Patreon, this is your free pattern for March. I didn't want to forget to tell you. This is going in the Etsy shop, so if you're on Patreon, don't go to Etsy to get it. I'm going to upload this over the weekend. It's all ready to go. You get the SVGs included if you have a scan, a cutter, Cricut, or Silhouette. But I'm going to use some of my stash that I just got to do my bunny. Isn't that stinking cute? Keep an eye out for that. House hunting. When I'm done here today, we're going to be heading towards the house that we're going to go see this evening. But it'll be dark at the time we're supposed to be there. So we kind of want to see the area before it gets dark. We had an offer on another house that was so frustrating that on my birthday we found out after extending their time to answer us back on our offer that they still had not made up their mind. Because there were 3 siblings in a trust that can't make up their mind. 2 of them agree and 1 does not agree on the price. So after extending a deadline on them to respond to our offer by 4 days, they still did not agree. So we were like, forget this. That's a nightmare. So we're still looking. We're looking at a house this evening that I love. And we're looking at a house tomorrow that Harlan loves. if we make it through this weekend in one piece, you know our marriage is solid as rocks, because I really love this house we're going to today, and he really loves the house we're going to tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. So yeah, so that's where we are with the house hunting. I'm just wondering if I'm frozen. Oh, there it goes. It's moving. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now before I forget again. I wanted to bring up the first shop. Okay, so the first shop we're going to bring up is the Epicurean Boutique. They are a shop in Occoquan, Virginia. That's the shop where I got the 2 cute little patterns. And I'm going to tell you, I'll probably make a whole bunch of these cats. I can tell you that right now. So I got the patterns. They had thousands of patterns. And they had these bags. I don't know if they only do this during the show or if they offer these on their website or not. But I actually think that this is a fantastic deal. So let me share my screen. Let's go over here. This is the website. See, look at all those wool projects, right? Look at that. That's their booth setup. Look at that. Can you imagine? I spent so much time in this booth just looking around. I'm just going to let that, because it goes by really fast. I'm just going to let you eye candy her booth for a minute. Okay, so it's, if you can't see it at the top, I'm going to spell it for you. Or no, there you go. That's the website. Just type that shop name into your browser and it comes up. Okay. So it looks like you can shop right there on the website. Again, I'm not sponsored by them. They don't even know that I'm talking about them. And I really only ever talk about shops that I buy from that I really like, that I have experience with. I don't like talking about shops and supplies that I've never used before. So last year I got lots of wool fat quarters and 2 bundles of pearl cotton thread from this shop. And let me just pull up their quilt and fiber shows for 2023. So they were just at the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival where we were. But in March, they're going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina. The end of March, the April the 1st, they're going to be in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In April, they're going to be in Georgetown, Delaware. In May, they're going to be in Maryland and in Ohio. September, they're going to be in Berryville, Virginia. I don't know where that is. I've never heard of it. October, they're going to be in New York. And in November, looks like they're going to be in Maine. Oh, I bet you that's the perfect time to go. Oh, the leaves are going to, well, depending on the leaves, right? That'll be the perfect time to go to Maine. So there's the show dates. But go to the website. You can click on all the things, right? Yeah, lots of pearl cottons. You can shop right there on their website or give them a call, right? You can hit the contact us button. Yeah, I know lots of you guys are allergic to wool. That's such a stinker. Try using felt. Or, I don't know if your allergy also includes things like other fibers like alpaca. I don't know. All right, so that was the first shop. And then The second website I'm going to pull up is the Appliquick, and that's the one where I got the scissors and the invisible thread and the tiniest little needles I've ever purchased in my entire life. That is this website, Appliquick. If you just type in appliquick.com, the website comes up. So it looks like they have laser cut appliques, which is very interesting. It also looks like they teach courses, which is very interesting. I think as far as teachers go, for handwork, she would be phenomenal. She was so talented, y'all. So just scrolling through, it looks like they have some YouTube stuff. Festival dates. I don't know. Let's see if they have a shopping. Here we go. Shop online. Here, let's click on that and see what they have. There you go. There's the scissors. They have special pencils, fabric glue. Y'all, you have a hard time convincing me to use something other than Elmer's, but I did love the scissors. Okay. Anyway, so that's the website for the scissors in case you're interested. And then the Floriani, I did not type in a link for Floriani, but if you just Google search Floriani, I don't know if you can find these sample packs without going to a show. But if you go to a show, they might have them on the website. They might send them to you. I don't know. You could call and ask them. But if you type in Floriani in a Google search or whatever, you'll find their website very easily. And you can find out how to acquire this sample pack of stabilizers. I thought it was fantastic. It was a short little time, but I am glad I got to see you. Yes. QuiltCon 2024 is in Raleigh, North Carolina. Ooh. That's right around the same time, isn't it? Delia, Miss Delia, you're in the Patreon, right? Yes, you just joined the Patreon group. That's awesome. So the bunny pattern, I haven't released it yet. If you're on Patreon, keep your eyes peeled to the Patreon page and throughout the weekend. We have to leave here in a little bit today, and I don't know what time we'll be back. Tomorrow morning, we're going to go look at a house. We should be home by lunchtime. So probably tomorrow afternoon, it'll be up on the Patreon page. There's 2 links. It'll be a PDF. You print the pages. If you want the SVGs, there'll be a second link on the Patreon page. And then I'm going to list it in the Etsy shop as well. But Patreon members, you'll go to Patreon to get it. Okay? But yeah, it's going to be a cute, like 7 by 14 inch little wall hanging. So many of you remember, I've packed it away now. I had a little quilt stand that just sits right there. It's the perfect size quilt that fits on that stand. But it's also the perfect size quilt that you can pin to like the refrigerator with a magnet or something. Right? It's also the perfect size quilt that you could switch out the applique. So if you wanted to not do the bunny and the little spring greetings, all kinds of applique shapes would fit in that, and you could do it for multiple seasons. Same pattern, swap out the applique, right? Sharon said, do you think the scissors will eliminate fraying? Let me just tell you, Sharon, let's cut some wool. Since I have a few minutes and we're just hanging out, let me get these scissors out. They were so clean cutting. You know what? Where's my little pieces? Here, all right, here's the triangles. This is quilter's cotton, right? Just quilter's cotton. Look, I was picking them up like I pick up my normal scissors. Pinky, 2 fingers, and that finger like that. Oh my goodness, look how clean that is. I'm going to do this next to the microphone so maybe you can hear the noise. It's got a tooth to the cut, all right? I don't know that you're going to hear it. Did you hear that? Can you hear that? Look how clean those cuts are. But here's the thing. So it cleans very cutly. It cleans very clean. It cuts very cleanly. But that's not to say that if you handle this piece a lot, that fabric's not going to fray down the road. Right? That's the nature of fabric. Is that if you work with the fabric, it will fray over time, just like that. But look how clean the cuts are when you're making them, right? Yes, you can hear it good. Yeah, it cuts. It has a tooth to it, and it cuts very cleanly. So, and that's fabric that has not been stabilized, right? That's just like that. But this is the reason why I got it, because the wool and felt, right, is much thicker. Here's a piece that's already been cut. I think I was playing with my scissors at lunch. So this is much thicker and kind of poofy, right? See that? And sometimes I do my wool applique with heat and bond on the back. And my project with Anitra, I used freezer paper to cut my shapes with. So yeah, either one. But look how clean and super easy, right? I'm holding them wrong. That's going to take a minute to get used to. Tiny little snippets off. I have a lot of control. See that? Yeah. I mean, I paid $58 for them. But look how clean that cut is. Very, very clean. Very nice cut. $58. For me, okay, here's my reasoning and my justification for buying these. I probably will never use them for this. I cut my applique like, you know, with this, with my scan and cut. But if you're a fussy cutter, no matter what fabric you're cutting, I feel like these are a good investment. I would never cut paper with these scissors. And this is probably the only pair of scissors that I have that I would say that. Because I'm not picky about my scissors. This is the most money I've invested in a pair of scissors, if that tells you anything. So I will be very picky with these scissors, and they have a specific job for me. These are my wool applique scissors. But I feel like because they do self-sharpen as you use them, and they're very high quality, that these will last me forever. So. Sheila said quality ASMR. That's funny. Mimsy said for bag makers, they also cut through nylon zippers like butter. That's good to know. Peg, mine did come with the roller. That was like one of the show perks. Like I really wanted for the machine to be on sale at the show. And I was hoping to like get a discount code or something, but no, there's none of that. But as far as incentives to buy at the show, I did get the roller for free, and I got the carry-in bag for my scan and cut for free. Oh, there's a little smidgen. Let's throw that in the bag. So yeah, I got that. Sue said, what's nice about those is that it kind of grabs the fabric as you cut it. It does. I feel like I have a lot more control with these scissors. Yeah, if your daughter-in-law likes doing some handwork, I feel like these are an investment, but it's also a tool that is worth the investment if you're going to use them. Like if you're not doing a lot of intricate hand cutting, I don't know that I would have bought them. But that's my plan anyway. That's my plan. And I do feel like from my situation with my fingers, my trimmers, that I have better control fussy cutting with these. So it made a lot of sense for me. Mine are the medium ones. They had small and large. I got the mediums. Pamela, I don't know that I've tried those scissors. I'm not even going to try to say the name of them. So those are my goodies. I feel like, well, it feels like I didn't come home with lots and lots of bags of stuff like I did last year, but I still spent the same amount of money because of this thing right there. Last year I came home, my car was filled with bags, and I was unloading bags and filled my whole table up with stuff. And this year, I mean, this was it, but same amount of money. And I do feel like that's a good investment. I will tell you, okay, I will tell you that this machine is faster than my CM350. I scanned something and it went brrr, brrr. I was like, are you kidding me? That was fast. Like with my CM350, I can load the mat and hit the scan, and I have time to walk across the room to grab my drink and come back, and it's just getting done scanning, right? This, scan and done. Same with the cutting, and it's super quiet. But y'all, my CM350 is my first love. She still works like she's brand new. She might be noisy and slower, but she still works like she's brand new. I have been on the fence in the last couple of days of seeing if my daughter wants it, because when she was working with me for a little while, she really loved it. And I mean, can we just be honest, even buying a used machine, it's still an investment. And I feel like, you know, if she wants it, I feel like she can have it, although it'll be like a little piece of me is leaving, but at least she will have it. So I would be happy for her to have it, because she did really enjoy making stuff with it when she's here. So I was thinking about keeping them side by side, but if she will use it, then I will gladly give it to her. But I'll be sad to see it go. And can I just tell you, before we go, and we drive out into the middle of nowhere to see the most prettiest house I've ever seen, can I just tell you, because I like keeping it real with you, the CM350, in my opinion, like, I don't know why they changed the look of these machines to so boxy looking, but I think the CM350 is prettier than that. The Scan and Cut 2, in my opinion, I feel like is prettier than my brand new machine. And I'm a little bummed about that. So I might decorate her with something. Because my Scan and Cut has this really pretty floral pattern on the top. It came that way. And it came with the shape of it is a little sleeker. The new one's kind of boxy looking. I love the machine. I think I'm going to have to decorate my new machine because I just don't think she's as pretty. But we're going to have to glamour her up somehow. Anyway, keep me informed on how you're doing with your clues. Still upload your pictures on Creative Crew, okay? And yes, if you have questions, y'all, I hope you know that if I'm slow in getting back to you, if you reach out to me in a message or in an email, I am trying to be as quick as I can. We just have a lot going on, and it's just me. I try to be as quick as I can. One fast way, hopefully, to get answers to your question is to ask them right on the Creative Crew. Because I feel like you do get sometimes faster response than asking me. Sadly, and I'm so sorry, but it's just crazy here. So feel free to post your questions on Creative Crew. You can tag my name in it. I might see it faster that way too, because like I'll get a special notification if you tag my name in it. But I've still been kind of slow this past week, y'all. We've been out of the house a good majority of the time, and I just feel like I'm not Johnny on the spot this past week, okay? I still love you very much, and I hope you're having fun with this quilt. And if you're like me, hopefully with this week's clue, you will be able to catch up on previous clues. We're going to be starting to sew some of these clues together next week. Just letting you know. Have a fantastic week, everybody. It is messy outside, isn't it? We're going to be driving for about an hour. Ooh, where am I at? There we go. I love you so much. Bye, everybody. Be safe out there. Bye. Thank you, moderators. I appreciate y'all so much.